as you know, the World Health Organization, or the World Health Organization, as many know it now, are attempting a global takeover through so-called health management, something that they have not been able to do for the past 2 years. And just in time for the votes on the amendments to the international health regulations, we have a global outbreak of monkeypox, which they're now telling us that we need to be worried about. The Biden administration has said that the whole world needs to be worried. The Australian media is coming out saying that the whole world needs to be worried, Australia as well. So we are seeing these same tactics that were deployed at the start of COVID-19 being used yet again. So I thought I would bring Dr. Peter McCullough and author John Leake on today to talk to us about the real threats of monkeypox and how these tactics are being seen yet again, and how the world really needs to start to pay attention right now before they finalize this global dictatorship. Later on in the show, I will also be talking about Agenda 2030, now Agenda 2023, and how this all ties in together. But for now, here's Dr. McCullough and John Leake. The courage to face COVID. Dr. Peter McCullough and author John Leake, very good to have you. This is fantastic. This book, you rarely see the words courage and COVID in one sentence, but Dr. McCullough, you've been leading the way in really reducing the fear around this virus, telling people they can get early treatment. If only we had those treatments here in Australia. And John, you've authored many books, and now you've come together to write this phenomenal book. I've ordered my copy. Can't wait to read it. Talk to us a little bit about the courage to face COVID.
Well, Maria, thanks for having us on the program. It's great to be back with you. You know, America loves you and loves your whole media stream. It's fantastic. Your audience knows me pretty well. Dr. Peter McCullough, I'm a practicing internist and cardiologist in Dallas, Texas, trained in epidemiology. I've been fighting COVID-19. It's been mano e viro for me from the very beginning. And I kept a secret the entire time, and that was John Leake. I've been working with John Leake, best-selling author, to put the true narrative into an understandable format in a book that's already hitting the charts in Amazon in multiple categories. I'll let John introduce himself and how we got started.
Thanks for having me. John Leake. I am a true crime author. I was born here in Dallas, Texas, where I met Dr. McCullough last year, studied abroad in Vienna, Austria, where I lived for most of my adult life. While living in Vienna, I became a true crime author. I discovered a knack for researching and writing true crime books. My first 2 books had strong forensic medical components. There was sort of forensic pathology mysteries that were involved in both. So I became interested in that and somewhat adept at reading forensic medical literature. When SARS-CoV-2 arrived in the United States, I was back home visiting my family in Dallas. And quickly, I just began to perceive that what we were being told about it, what was being represented by our federal health agencies and by the mainstream media, much of it just didn't seem very plausible to me. It occurred to me that there were even elements of fraud, this withholding of treatment, suppressing of treatment. A lot of the statements and actions around early treatment struck me as perhaps even rising to the level of negligent homicide. It's an area of the law that I was familiar with from my second book. So I began to think, well, this is the biggest true crime story that I've ever seen. But I realized, you know, I realized with my earlier books, I can't investigate and research this without the assistance of medical authority. And that's probably the weirdest moment in this book. I thought, okay, I need a real top guy. I mean, the greater his clinical and academic experience, the better. But he can't just be any top doctor. He has to be a top doctor who is questioning the official narrative, researching a different way of looking at this, trying to get at the truth of the reality. Where is this guy? And, would he talk with me?
And who better than Dr. McCullough?
Well, the remarkable discovery is the guy, and I mean the guy, lives 2 miles away from me.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I didn't have to smuggle myself into Boston, Massachusetts to find some guru at Mass General or something. I mean, he was 2 miles away. He met me for a studio interview about 500 yards. That studio that I have a connection with happened to be 500 yards from his place of work. We do a studio interview. We're sort of all electrified by the interview. We publish it on YouTube, and 2 hours later, it's taken down.
Of course.
The empire strikes back. So that's when I realized, okay, this is really, really big and spooky. It's like we're in some kind of a matrix or something.
Speaking of big and spooky in a matrix, we're seeing very similar tactics. You mentioned crime, fraud, all of the above. One of the key things with COVID-19 was propaganda, and we're seeing very similar propaganda right now with monkeypox. I just saw this week Biden has said that we need to be very concerned about it. The World Health Organization has told us that we need to be very concerned and expect cases worldwide, including Australia. We've had that article come out in our mainstream media. Talk to us about whether we need to be very concerned, Dr. McCullough, about monkeypox. Are we seeing the same tactics with COVID, with this particular illness?
It's all in the open. We should be very skeptical. There was a planning meeting for this in March of 2021 in Munich. NTI and another group planned it. They had a tabletop exercise. It says it's going to happen. The release date for monkeypox was May 15th of 2022, almost a week before the World Health Organization attempts to, in a sense, take power and control worldwide on pandemic response. Monkeypox, a pustular illness that's been around for half a century. It doesn't spread very quickly. It emanates out of the Congo Basin. Some of the pictures of monkeypox on the internet right now are black and white. They're from the 1940s and 50s. So I think we should be very skeptical. I personally, as a doctor, I want to see a real case to make sure it's real. We do have some real solutions. For instance, everybody over age 50 worldwide should have very good protection from their smallpox vaccine right there. That should really allay a lot of concerns. And then we have the United States, we have an approved drug with a stockpile called TPOXX or tocilizumab. And that works against all the pox families, smallpox, cowpox, monkeypox, camelpox. So we have that drug. The FDA 3 days ago approved the IV form of that. And then in a complete hyperbolic overreach, the US government pre-purchases over 10 million doses of a live attenuated vaccine, as if people were going to line up and take a vaccine for this. I have to tell you, I've got to see a real case. I've got to get on the phone with somebody. I've got to see somebody. I got to examine them. I'm not too worried about it. It doesn't spread. Its R naught value is less than 1. It spreads by exchanging saliva or touching these pustules. We were just on a podcast where the interviewer was worried about, young people getting it. I said, man, you have to be pretty drunk on a date to miss that one. And, really lay on with these pustules and vesicles of somebody with monkeypox.
Well, I want to ask you, Dr. McCullough, in your expert opinion, because Belgium has just declared the first mandatory quarantine for suspected cases. And they're saying that there was a Pride festival in Gran Canaria, which they're calling a super spreader event, and that there's potentially 100 cases from that. Can we have super spreader events from something that is only spread, as you're saying, by actually touching these? I mean, is it possible?
It's called an orgy.
Yeah, well, that's what came to mind. Some type of sexual orgy. I mean, in large droplets, I guess is conceivable. Somebody covered with these pustules could just load up a big sneeze on you. But it's really this kind of close contact where people get it. I personally I'm going to go into the hospital tomorrow. I've got zero worry over this, 0. Now, if somebody seriously comes down with it, they can, take care of themselves at home and reach out to their doctor. I do want to know how to get the TPOXX drug. It's an oral drug, very effective. We've got a stockpile of 2 million doses, but this should not be a scare where countries announce lockdowns and restrictive measures for this type of illness.
Let me tell you what's really interesting. So in April, the New South Wales government stopped publishing information, or the Australian government stopped publishing information on COVID, and then changed all of their publications to information on monkeypox as of May. And what it says here is that the illness begins, and you can just do a Google search from the CDC. The illness begins with symptoms of monkeypox: fever, headache, muscle aches, swollen lymph nodes, chills, and exhaustion. It looks like they are preparing the public for this sort of, symptoms that really are just the flu. Normally, we would have these symptoms.
Or they could be symptoms after you take a vaccine.
Correct. And fear, causing this fear campaign to make people think that they've contracted monkeypox, and these are their symptoms. So can you confirm for us, if they have fever, headache, muscle aches, but none of these external symptoms of monkeypox or whatever it is that we're talking about, do they probably have monkeypox, or are they having an adverse event?
Honestly, I've never seen a case. There is a long latency phase potentially, that is coming in contact with somebody and then a week or two coming down with it. But my understanding is the constitutional symptoms of malaise, inanition, fever, swollen lymph nodes, that cooks right along with the expression of the pustular and vesicular lesions, and they're large pustules. There's some stories in the internet today of people confusing shingles versus this. Now, this involves the palms of the hands. It'll be unmistakable.
Right. So again, for the public, no need to fear this. Like we were told with COVID that we needed to be terribly afraid. We don't need to. I have one more question for you, Dr. McCullough, before we move on. Mask mandates in New York City plan to return in light of monkeypox concerns. Does it spread in the air?
Well, someone covered with pustules, if they had a large cough or sneeze, theoretically the saliva or the nasal secretions could spray on somebody. But at that stage, somebody really should be sequestered and by themselves. This knee-jerk reaction to go back to masks is something I think we should really carefully examine. There's just an absurdity to it, and it's clearly fear-driven. What
we really need to be doing is quarantining the sick and let the healthy just be cautious.
Yeah, exactly, and here, fortunately, what's been described as young men and what have you, the elderly and the more frail should be protected. So,
and John, are you seeing similar patterns now with the fear-driven campaigns, with the propaganda? Talk to us through that.
Well, we walk through this as it unfolds in our book about COVID-19. This, what we call the Bio-Pharmaceutical complex. This is analogous to our President Eisenhower in his farewell speech of 1961, his farewell address. He spoke of the danger of the military-industrial complex. I don't know if Australians are familiar with that expression. Eisenhower was himself a military man. He was the supreme Allied commander in World War II. He didn't have a problem with the military, but what he recognized is that this complex of defense industry, Department of Defense, it becomes so big and so voracious. It's in the business of dealing with conflict, military conflict, or the threat of military conflict. The problem is that there's so much money and jobs and patronage and resources that gets pumped into it. It creates a perverse incentive not to diffuse military conflict, but actually to seek entanglements and conflicts, because it justifies ever more resources flowing into the complex. And we see a very similar thing happening with the biopharmaceutical complex. At a certain point, one develops a perverse incentive to overstate the threat of things, to even perceive emerging infectious diseases as an opportunity. It's like, oh, this is great. Now all of these new products that we've got in development in our labs will receive massive government funding. So we explore all of this in our book, and we've discovered these networks and partnerships, which are very international in nature. You have some Australian public health officials that are really sitting right at the top of this complex, and some of these institutions that were founded in Switzerland, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, some of the institutions that these guys have founded in recent years. So this is just the monkeypox. It's like no sooner are we seeming to kind of work our way through SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 illness, that, here's the next one. And lo and behold, we have an enormous stock of vaccines that are ready to rock and roll. And the government is all too willing to get out its checkbook and write a big fat check for it. So
on those vaccines, actually, Dr. McCullough, how do we have 13 million doses for the United States ready to go? There's more in Europe. Canada's talking about ordering millions as well. Where did they come from?
There was a paper in New England Journal of Medicine in 2018 by Grossenbeck and colleagues, and it had to do with smallpox. And it was testing this drug, tecovirimat. But I read the report carefully, and in the introduction, it was stated by the authors that a single case of smallpox would be a worldwide crisis, would be a single case of smallpox. That's in 2018. So I can tell you this biopharmaceutical complex, in terms of its connection to potential bioterrorism, to other threats, is really ready to rock and roll with fear. A single case of an orthopox family illness. And sure enough, here we have already a company. Most of these companies, by the way, do get development funds through various National Institutes of Health or government agencies to get going. They do, and it's a live attenuated vaccine. We know the monkeypox, like smallpox, is a double-stranded DNA virus. And, sure enough, they have one ready to go. There's a company and some giant purchase number. And do you know through SARS-CoV-2 pandemic that Moderna, which previously didn't make $1 in its history, the United States co-owns the patents for the initial Moderna vaccine. Do you know what Moderna has announced? 15 messenger RNA products, 15. The first one is far from successful, is loaded with safety problems. We have these alarming kind of safety disaster with the mRNA products. They've announced 15. I just can't imagine what's in their minds. Do human beings think they're going to take the foreign genetic code for 15 different antigens of different pathogens that our body's going to be juiced with the genetic code of all these other invaders to our body? I mean, it's almost at this point in time, it's off the rails. It's diabolical.
Well, here's my concern. You mentioned before, it's just in time for this WHO amendment to the international health regulations that they've proposed. All the countries that want to sign up for it. Unfortunately, Australia was one of the first to say, yes, we can't wait to do this. I just mentioned we had our elections this weekend. The previous Prime Minister was talking about how he was all for it. The current Prime Minister, the new one, really wants to jump on board with this, wants to build more quarantine camps, wants to push more boosters. It is really this constant cycle of pushing vaccines into people that are not necessary, that are destroying our body's ability to fight off disease and making us dependent on this product. And I can't remember who it was that I interviewed, but they said the World Health Organization, the CDC, all these organizations are literally vaccine companies. This is what they are. They're vaccine companies. I have a question for you, Dr. McCullough, about, I've seen multiple references about AstraZeneca, for example, including using a chimpanzee adenovirus vaccine vector. Is there any way that this can actually be related, that the people who've been injected with the COVID shots are somehow getting this monkeypox because of this chimpanzee adenovirus?
No, I don't think. I think there's great confusion regarding the adenoviral vectors that's in the Sputnik vaccine, the AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson vaccines. They're simply replication incompetent vectors. They don't have anything to do with these other diseases occurring. But what may be at the root of things is the accumulation of messenger RNA and certainly the accumulation of spike protein in the body. With each injection of these vaccines, that there's a production of the spike protein, the messenger RNA is in the body at least for a couple months. That's been proven in a paper from Stanford, published in Cell by Rolkin and colleagues. The spike protein in the body almost certainly over a year, the data in hand by Bruce Patterson at IncellDX. So it's that foreign material that shouldn't be in the body that is, in a sense, a distraction for the immune system and a continued taxing of the immune system. And now we have breaking data that when someone does take one of these products and is kind of fully inoculated, when they actually do get SARS-CoV-2 infection, they get a less complete immune response against SARS-CoV-2, as if the body's immune system is being beaten down and it may be primed for another infection. So if we also have a hepatitis outbreak on our hands, children getting hepatitis, paper in Lancet Hepatology in the last week by from the UK and from Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, suggesting that the children are getting exposed to SARS-CoV-2. They're either getting themselves, or parents are getting it, or they're taking vaccines. And that's the setup for a relatively innocuous adenovirus 41 to cause hepatitis, now bring in monkeypox. Is it conceivable that mass vaccination now is allowing outbreaks of other contagious viral illnesses? You know, I think it is. Obviously, for each case, we need to know, did they take one of the COVID-19 products? But it's interesting that it's emanating out of the Congo Basin. You know, that central part of Africa is the least vaccinated out of all the regions in the world.
Very interesting. And I think that's a very good point. Anyone who's contracting this, have they been injected with the COVID-19 injection? And, you know, I brought you on, Dr. McCullough and John, to really just reduce the fear around this, because we're being fed that same, you know, propaganda that we all need to be terrified. The World Health Organization is pushing this again, not giving people hope, no, creating fear so that they can push these vaccines. The same tactic with COVID. Go on, John.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, a lot of, to give you an idea of how the public's mind, there's psychologists call it hypervigilance. It's a very interesting concept. You know, most of the time we go through life and we're not particularly vigilant or alert if we live in a more or less secure world. You're not looking, you know, every little whisper behind the bush doesn't prompt the thought that there's a dangerous predatory animal about to leap out, or a snake, you know, that you're about to step on the path. But we become hypervigilant, which is you're in a high state of alertness for danger when you're constantly being barraged with messaging. You know, there's something lurking behind every bush. There's a serpent on every trail. So that's what our media and our government agencies have been in the business of doing for the last 2 years. We had a monkeypox outbreak, a small one that was quickly contained in the United States in 2003. No one even remembers it. Most people didn't even know it was happening at the time. It happened through the pet trade. There was some pouch rats, kind of these peculiar little rodents that were brought in from Africa, and they were housed with pet guinea pigs. 70 people got monkeypox in the United States, but it's very identifiable. It's It's grotesquely symptomatic. These people were treated and kept at home, and that was the end of it. We never heard another peep about it. So why now? I mean, these cases appear to be sort of Dionysian sexual contact that's resulted in some isolated cases within a certain subgroup. And, now we all have to be terrified of monkeypox, which they just happened to be talking about at the Munich Security Conference in March of 2000. I mean, when is the public going to begin to realize we need to adopt a skeptical posture? It's not that we have to become just the most hard bit cynics, but just hang on a minute. I mean, the public, I think, needs to accept that they are under constant siege by propaganda.
Absolutely. And I think that this book, The Courage to Face COVID, will help people do that. We thank you so much for putting this out there. Dr. McCullough, you've been, day and night, and you're writing a book, and John Leake, joining in on this. We really, there it is. Wonderful. We really appreciate your effort to really remove the fear in the population and break through. I mean, the title in itself is, I think, designed to break through to just not only people that agree with you, but those that are pretty well done with this constant cycle of fear and pandemics. Let's move on from this. Let's apply scrutiny to these organizations like the World Health Organization that cannot manage our health. There needs to be a lot of pushback globally about this pandemic treaty or amendments to the IHR. They haven't managed our health properly. They won't manage our health properly. They're about pushing their products, and we simply cannot trust them. CourageToFaceCovid.com. Head there, support Dr. McCullough and John Leake by getting this book and share the information around there. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today.
Thank you.
Could I end on a slightly humorous note?
Of course.
The Australians are said to have a good sense of humor, so maybe they'll forgive me for this. Dr. McCullough and I have found that the really courageous bunch in all of this, it's young women, particularly young mothers. We found, at least here in the United States, Dr. McCullough has had this enormous coalescing of support. Young mothers, is that not the case? And so I think we're also facing amongst young men a kind of contagion of weeniness. I mean, like we need to not, and I'm not talking about just a sort of contagion of the rise of the weenies. Young men need to not only not be afraid of SARS-CoV-2, they also need to start demonstrating some courage in standing up to this health tyranny, this rule by public health bureaucrats. I mean, these guys, we need to, within the framework of the law, of the Constitution, stand up together and saying, we're not going to accept this anymore. And I'm not advocating anything more than just old-fashioned, I want to be clear on this, civil disobedience. Just stand up and say, no, you're not going to lock us up. You're not going to put people in the paddy wagon just for saying they're not going to be injected or where. Our citizens of our free constitutional republic need to find the courage to stand up.
Yes.
To say,
John, I'll quickly add here, I spoke to some strangers. I mean, being out in public with me really is embarrassing, by the way, because I just talk to absolutely every single person I meet. But I was talking to some strangers over the weekend, and we were talking about the election, and they said, oh, well, it makes sense that this government, we needed a change of government. They only ever see the two-party option, of course. And I said, well, do you know what this government is planning? And I spoke to them about the treaty, and they said, you've got to be kidding me. Now, these people were actually very pro injection people. They were all for it, but they agreed that the government had gone too far. And when I spoke to them about what the World Health Organization was planning and how our government wanted to submit to that, they said, we absolutely don't want that. Can you give us more information? So I gave out my card and whatnot. So what I think is people are starting to realize that there was too much government overreach, that it wasn't managed properly, and they're starting to look to other solutions, and let's move on. People want to have normal lives. And I think that's why we have to keep going as hard as it is to break through the spell. We have to keep going with the truth. Thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are well and truly done with the clown show. We do not buy this nonsense anymore. But in the next segment, I will talk to you about Agenda 2030, now 2023, and the next steps, which are global dictatorship through climate change scares, and how this is all going to tie in together. Subscribe to Red Voice Media Premium. Support this network for everything that they do, giving a voice to the truth. And I'll see you in the next segment.